"What are you doing in my house?" I screamed, my voice trembling yet fierce, tearing through the quiet afternoon air like a thunderclap. It wasn't just a shout, it was confusion, anger, heartbreak, and disbelief all tangled into one sound. My lungs burned with the force of it, and my heart pounded so violently against my ribs that I feared it might break free from my chest. There, kneeling before me at the front door of my own home, were my son Marcus and my daughter-in-law Tiffany. Both had tools in their hands, a wrench, a screwdriver, and a guilty look written across their faces. They were prying at the lock, desperate, focused, and completely unaware that I was standing behind them, watching. A massive moving truck was parked right in front of my driveway, its back door yawning open. Inside, I saw pieces of my life, my furniture, my memories, already packed and stacked like unwanted things. My antique side table, the one I inherited from my mother. The dining chairs Bernard and I bought for our 10th anniversary. The throw blanket he used every winter. All of it. Inside that truck. "Mom, you were supposed to be traveling for 2 weeks," Marcus stammered, his face drained of all color. The tools slipped from his trembling hands, clattering against the pavement. Tiffany froze beside him, her hand gripping the screwdriver so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Mother-in-law, we just wanted—" she began, but her voice broke, lost somewhere between fear and shame. For a long, heavy moment, I couldn't speak. I just stared at them, at my own flesh and blood, and felt my world tilt off its axis. "Let me tell you," I whispered inside my mind, "how I got to this moment. How one canceled flight led me to the most painful truth of my life. My name is Eleanor Tillman, though everyone calls me Ellie. I am 67 years old, and I have been a widow for 5. My husband, Bernard, was the love of my life, my anchor through 42 years of marriage. When he died, I thought I had already felt the worst pain life could offer. But I was wrong, because the pain of that afternoon, standing there, watching my only son try to rob me, was something entirely different. It was betrayal, and it cut deeper than any grief ever had. That morning had begun like any other. I woke at 6, brewed my usual cup of coffee, and checked my suitcase for the 3rd time. I had been planning this trip for months. My younger sister Doris, who lives in another state, had insisted I come visit her. "Ellie, you need to get out of that house," she'd say every week over the phone. "You need to breathe. You need to change." She was right. Since Bernard's death, I had barely left the house we built together. The house where Marcus took his first steps. The house where we celebrated birthdays, Christmases, anniversaries. Every corner held a piece of my heart. Every room whispered a story. At 8 o'clock sharp, the taxi arrived. I took one last lingering look at my home, at the life contained within those walls, and then locked the door. I slipped the keys into my purse, unaware that those same keys would soon be the reason I caught my son in the act. Marcus knew I was leaving. I had told him 2 weeks earlier. He'd even come by the day before to wish me a safe trip. I remember now how strangely nervous he seemed, how quickly he left after saying goodbye. I thought nothing of it then. But now, that memory burned in my mind like acid. The airport was crowded, filled with chatter, rolling luggage, and the faint smell of coffee. I checked in, went through security, and sat in the waiting lounge with my favorite book. My flight was supposed to depart at 11, but at 10:30, a voice announced over the loudspeakers that our flight had been canceled due to technical issues. They offered to rebook passengers for the next day. I could have stayed at a hotel called Doris and waited, but something deep inside me, that unexplainable instinct that mothers have, whispered, "Go home, Ellie." It wasn't logic. It was something else. A quiet, urgent voice telling me something was wrong. I grabbed my suitcase, left the airport, and called a cab. The 40-minute ride home felt longer than ever. I stared out the window at the familiar streets of my city, lost in thought. Maybe I'd try again tomorrow, I told myself. Or maybe this was fate's way of telling me I shouldn't go at all. Bernard used to tease me for being superstitious, but he also believed that sometimes the universe sent us warnings. When the cab turned onto my street, I noticed a large truck parked directly in front of my house. At first, I thought perhaps a neighbor was moving out. But as the cab slowed, I saw that the truck was parked exactly in front of my driveway, its back door open wide. My stomach twisted. I paid the driver and stepped out, suitcase in hand. The air felt heavier, the silence thicker. Every step toward the house felt harder than the last. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. I could feel it in every bone of my body. As I walked up the front path, I saw them, Marcus and Tiffany. My son, my only child, kneeling by the door of the house he grew up in, with a tool in his hand. His wife beside him, holding a screwdriver, both of them so focused on breaking the lock that they didn't even notice me approach. For a few seconds, my mind refused to understand what I was seeing. I simply froze, watching a scene that felt ripped from a nightmare. Behind them, inside the truck, I could see boxes. Not just furniture, but things wrapped in blankets, my possessions, my memories. That's when the words burst out of me. "What are you doing in my house?" Marcus jumped to his feet so fast he nearly lost his balance. His face went from pale to terrified. Tiffany's hand shook violently, her mouth opening and closing without sound. "My flight was canceled," I said finally, my voice trembling with rage and disbelief. "But that doesn't answer my question. Why are you trying to break into my house?" Tiffany tried to speak. "Mother-in-law, we just wanted—" "You just wanted what?" I snapped. "To break in? To steal my things while I was gone?" My eyes darted to the truck again, taking in the full extent of what they'd done. My dining set, the antique chest, boxes full of clothes, photo albums. How long had they been planning this? How long had they been waiting for me to leave? "It's not what you think, Mom," Marcus finally said, his voice weak, almost pleading. "Then explain it," I demanded, crossing my arms over my chest, trying to hide the trembling that wouldn't stop. "Explain to me why my only son is standing here with tools in his hands. Explain why a moving truck full of my belongings is sitting in front of my house. Explain to me why, right now, I feel like my heart is being shattered into 1,000 pieces." Marcus looked at Tiffany, and in that brief exchange of glances, I saw the truth. They had planned this. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was betrayal, deliberate, quiet, and cruel. And it came from the very people I loved the most. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate, carefully calculated plan. Something thought through, prepared for, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Mom." "Please, let me explain," Marcus said, taking a hesitant step toward me. But I instinctively moved back, my hand raised slightly, as if to protect myself from my own child. That small gesture, that quiet, involuntary retreat, seemed to wound him more than any insult ever could. His face fell, his shoulders sagged, and for a second I almost saw the little boy I used to comfort after nightmares. But that illusion vanished as quickly as it came. "Things have been tough for us lately," he began, his voice shaking. "Tough?" I repeated, the words slicing through my lips like a knife. My voice was low, trembling with anger and disbelief. "And that gives you the right to rob me?" "We're not robbing you!" Tiffany suddenly blurted out, her voice high-pitched and defensive. Her eyes darted between me and the truck, her whole body tense like a cornered animal. "We're family, we thought you could help us." "Help you?" I let out a bitter, hollow laugh, a sound that didn't even feel like it belonged to me. "Help you? By letting you empty my house while I was gone? Without asking? Without permission?" I walked past them, my steps heavy, each one echoing on the driveway like the ticking of a clock counting down to something dreadful. I climbed the ramp into the truck, needing to see with my own eyes what they had taken. What pieces of my life they had decided were theirs to sell. Every object I recognized felt like another blow to my heart. There was the delicate porcelain tea set Bernard had given me for our 25th anniversary, each cup now wrapped in newspaper like it was nothing. The antique lamps we bought together at a flea market 30 years ago. The paintings that had hung in our living room for decades, including the one my mother painted before she died. Even my father's old radio sat there, dusty and displaced, as though my entire past had been boxed up for profit. "How much?" I asked quietly, still facing the truck's interior, my voice barely more than a whisper. "How much did you plan to make? By selling my entire life?" "Mom, please!" Marcus's voice broke behind me. I turned to look at him, and that was when the tears I had been holding back finally began to fall. "I have one simple question." "Marcus," I said, my voice trembling as the anger gave way to something far more painful. "Just one question. And I want the truth. Is this the first time?" The silence that followed was unbearable. The air itself felt heavy with guilt. Marcus couldn't meet my eyes. Tiffany bit her lower lip and stared at the ground, her cheeks flushed red. "Answer me," I demanded, louder this time. "Is this the first time you've been inside my house without my permission?" Tiffany opened her mouth to speak, but Marcus stopped her with a hand. His voice was quiet when he finally spoke. "No." Just that one word, and it shattered something inside me. I felt the air leave my lungs, my knees weaken. We've been here before," he continued, barely audible. "When you went grocery shopping. When you visited Aunt Doris. When you went to your doctor's appointments." I leaned against the side of the truck, my body trembling. I needed something to hold on to, because the ground beneath me felt like it was collapsing. "How many times?" I asked. "I don't know, Mom," he said. "A few times. Maybe several times in the past 3 months." 3 months. I repeated the words slowly, as though saying them aloud would make them less real. For 3 months, I had been living in my home, feeling safe, secure, surrounded by memories, while my own son had been sneaking in like a stranger in the night. All those moments I thought I was becoming forgetful, When I couldn't find a book, a frame, a piece of jewelry, I had blamed age. I thought my mind was slipping. But it hadn't been my imagination. It had been them. What have you taken? I asked, though every part of me dreaded the answer. Before today? What else did you steal? Marcus and Tiffany exchanged a look. That silent exchange of guilt that couples share when they know words will only make things worse. Small things, Tiffany murmured, barely audible. Things we thought you wouldn't notice right away. Like what? I pressed, my voice shaking as rage began to rise again from the depths of my chest. Marcus swallowed hard. Some jewelry, some silver candle holders, a few antique books we thought had value. Each word landed like a strike to my heart. My mother's jewelry, I whispered. The pearl earrings she left me before she died. The gold necklace she wore at her wedding. My voice cracked. I thought I'd lost them. I searched for weeks. Marcus tried to speak, desperation flickering in his eyes. We needed them, Mom. We had debts. We had to pay. Then you should have asked me for help. I screamed, the sound echoing down the street. I'm your mother, Marcus. If you needed money, if you were in trouble, you could have come to me. But instead, you broke into my home. You robbed me. You betrayed the trust I spent a lifetime building with you. Tiffany stepped forward, her tone sharp, defensive. We knew you didn't have much money. You always say your pension barely covers your bills. We didn't want to burden you. Burden me? I snapped, my eyes burning. You think this is better? You think stealing from me and violating my home is less of a burden? I climbed down from the truck, my body trembling with fury and disbelief. My fingers shook as I pulled the house keys from my purse. I needed to go inside. I needed to see the damage, to see what else they had touched. When I opened the door, everything looked almost normal. But when you know your home, when you've lived inside it for decades, you see the absences. You feel them. The shelf where my grandmother's crystal figurines once stood was bare. The cabinet that held Bernard's antique watches was open, its shelves stripped. I felt my throat tighten as I walked to my bedroom, that sacred space of memories. My footsteps heavy, my heart breaking with everyone. Marcus and Tiffany followed behind me, silent shadows. I opened the drawer of my dresser, the one that held my most precious belongings. It was almost empty. My breath caught. The locket, I whispered, my voice hollow. The gold locket Bernard gave me on our last anniversary together. It has pictures of us when we were young. My voice cracked. Where is it? Silence. Where is it? I screamed, spinning toward them with a rage I didn't know I was capable of. Tiffany lowered her gaze, her voice barely a breath. We sold it, she said quietly. 2 weeks ago. We needed to pay the rent, or we were going to be evicted, Marcus whispered. I felt as if my heart had been ripped out of my chest. That locket wasn't just jewelry. It was the most precious thing I owned. It was Bernard's last gift to me, the final tangible piece of our love I could still hold in my hands. And they had sold it. They had sold it as if it were a worthless trinket. How much? I asked, my voice trembling, my anger barely contained. How much did you get for it? $200, Marcus murmured. $200. They had traded 42 years of marriage, of memories, of love, for $200 miserable dollars. My knees weakened. I sat on the edge of my bed because if I didn't, I knew I would collapse entirely. The tears came freely now, and I didn't try to stop them. Marcus stepped closer, reaching for my shoulder, but I jerked away. Don't touch me, I said, my voice like ice. Don't you dare touch me. Mom, I'm so sorry, Marcus sobbed. We didn't want it to come to this. We thought, if you left for 2 weeks, we could take a few things, sell them, fix everything, and you'd never have to find out. And then what? I asked, staring directly into his eyes. Then what, Marcus? When I came back and saw my home empty, what were you going to tell me? That there had been a break-in? Were you going to lie to my face while I mourned the loss of everything I loved? He didn't answer. There was no answer that could justify this. Who else did you sell my things to? I pressed. I want to know everything. My mother's jewels, Bernard's watches, my grandmother's crystal collection. There's a pawn shop on 7th Street, Tiffany said softly, her eyes fixed on the floor. We took most of the things there. Some we sold online in those buy and sell groups. And the money? I demanded. What did you spend it on? The money you got from selling my memories. We had debts, Marcus began, his voice cracking. The credit cards were maxed out. We owed 3 months of rent. The car was about to be repossessed. Collectors were calling every day, threatening lawsuits, and it never occurred to you to ask me for help? I interrupted, my disbelief rising with my fury. It never crossed your mind to come to me, your mother, and tell me the truth? Marcus buried his face in his hands. He was crying too, but his tears no longer moved me. Once I would have reached out, held him, comforted him, but not anymore. I could no longer feel compassion for someone who had shattered my trust so deliberately. We were ashamed. he whispered finally, ashamed to admit we'd failed. That we couldn't manage our money. That we were drowning in debt. So you preferred to become thieves, I said bitterly. You preferred to steal from a 67-year-old woman who lives alone on her pension. That was your best solution? You're not just an old woman, Tiffany cut in sharply. There was something in her tone that made my blood run cold. I turned toward her. What's that supposed to mean? You own this house, she said, folding her arms. A big house. In a good neighborhood. You're worth a lot more than you think, Ellie. Something in the way she said my name, Ellie, not Mom, sent a chill down my spine. What do you mean by that? I asked slowly. Tiffany glanced at Marcus as if seeking permission. He gave a small shake of his head, but she ignored it. This house is worth at least $300,000, she said, her words heavy in the silence. Probably more. And you live here alone, surrounded by empty rooms, while we can barely afford a one-bedroom apartment in the worst part of the city. There it was. The real truth. Not just desperation. Not just debt, but envy, resentment, greed. So you thought I didn't deserve to live in my own home, I said quietly. You thought I had too much and you had too little. It's not fair, Tiffany burst out, her voice rising, her face hardening. We work 60 hours a week and can barely survive while you sit here alone in this mansion. This is not a mansion, I said, my voice trembling. It's the home Bernard and I built with 40 years of sacrifice. Every dollar, every memory, every choice we made, it all went into these walls. This house is filled with our life. Memories don't pay bills, Tiffany snapped coldly. Tiffany! Marcus barked, but she didn't stop. It's the truth, Marcus, she said sharply. Your mother is sitting on a fortune while we're drowning. Why should she have all this when she doesn't even need it? I stood up facing her, shaking but defiant. Who are you, I said, to decide what I need? Who gave you the right to judge my life? Someone has to tell the truth, Tiffany shot back, crossing her arms. Marcus never will. He's too much of a coward. But someone has to. You're watching us drown while you have more than you could ever use. And your solution was to rob me? I shouted. That was your grand plan? To wait for me to leave, then empty my home? What was next? Were you planning to sell the house too? The silence that followed was the most horrifying answer of all. Oh, God, I whispered, my body trembling. You were going to sell my house. That was the final plan, wasn't it? Mom, no! Marcus stammered, but his face told me the truth. How? I asked. I needed to understand the full depth of this conspiracy. How did you plan to sell my house without my consent? I demanded, my voice small and sharp at once. Tiffany gave a humorless chuckle. Marcus has a limited power of attorney, remember? You gave it to him 2 years ago after your surgery so he could handle your affairs while you recovered. The ground felt like it yawned open beneath me. It was true. After my hip operation, I had signed a temporary power of attorney so Marcus could pay bills and take care of urgent matters. It was supposed to be a help, not a weapon. That power of attorney is limited, I said, forcing my mind to work even as the world reeled. It doesn't give you authority to sell my property. Tiffany's smile turned hard and cold. With a corrupt enough lawyer and a few forged signatures, she said, a lot can be done. Shut up, Marcus snapped, finally cracking. Just shut up. But the lid was off. Everything had been said. The plan, the full, ugly design of it, lay exposed between us. They hadn't only taken my things. They had schemed to take my home, the one place I still felt Bernard's presence. Get out, I said, my voice steady now, quieter but absolute. Get out of my house, right now. Mom, please, let me explain, Marcus begged, stepping forward. There is nothing to explain, I interrupted. Leave! Return everything in that truck now! We can't, Tiffany replied, flat and cold. Some of those things are gone, already sold. Then you'll pay me for them, I said, surprised by the steel in my own voice. Every cent, or I will call the police. You'd call the police on your own son? Tiffany sneered. Don't be ridiculous. You're too weak to do that. Her contempt only hardened me. I looked her straight in the eyes. Something in that look made her step back. Mom, please, Marcus sobbed openly. We didn't want it to end this way. We're family. Family doesn't steal from one another, I said, each word a shard of ice. Family doesn't conspire to take everything from one of their own. What you did is what criminals do. My hands were shaking as I pulled my phone from my pocket. Marcus saw the motion and turned an even paler shade. Who are you going to call? He asked, voice small with panic. First Doris, I said, my neighbor and my sister in arms. She'll be a witness. Then a locksmith. I'm changing every lock today. After that, Mr. Davies, my lawyer. Mom, you can't do this, Marcus pleaded. You'll ruin us. If you call the police, I'll have a record. I won't be able to get a job. You'll destroy us. You destroyed yourselves, I replied, dialing. I had done nothing but trust my son. Doris picked up on the second ring. Ellie? I thought you were on the plane. Doris, come to my house right now, I said, my voice breaking only a little. I need a witness. I'm on my way. The click of the door on her end sounded like salvation. She lived 3 houses down. She would be here in minutes. I turned back to Marcus and Tiffany. You have 2 choices. Wait for Doris and the police, or start putting everything back into that truck. Right now, maybe, I'll consider not pressing charges. That's blackmail, Tiffany spat. No, I said. It's justice. It's an opportunity you don't deserve, but I'm giving you anyway. An opportunity I never had when you turned my home into your warehouse. Marcus looked at the truck, then at me, then at Tiffany. The battle in his face was clear. The son I raised tangled with the man he'd become. All right, he said finally, voice thin as paper. We'll put everything back. Tiffany's face crumpled. What? Marcus, you can't be serious. We need that money. Enough, he said, wiping his face, spent and defeated. This has gone too far. I can't keep doing this. You're weak, Tiffany sneered, venom in every syllable. No, Marcus interrupted, voice changing into something I hadn't heard from him before, husky, raw. I'm a thief. I needed to understand the depth of this conspiracy, I said, forcing myself to steady my voice. How did you plan to sell my house without my consent? Tiffany laughed, a brittle, humorless sound. Marcus has a limited power of attorney, remember? You gave it to him 2 years ago after your surgery, so he could take care of things while you recovered. The floor seemed to drop away beneath me. It was true. After my hip operation, I had signed a temporary power of attorney so Marcus could handle bills and urgent matters. It was a practical kindness, not a license to betray me. That power is limited, I said, forcing reason into the shock. It doesn't authorize you to sell my property. Tiffany's smile was sudden and vicious. With a corrupt lawyer and a few forged signatures, a lot can be done, she said. Shut up, Marcus snapped, finally losing whatever fragile control he'd been holding. Just shut up. Everything spilled out then. The plot revealed itself in ugly, precise detail. They hadn't merely taken things. They had schemed to take my home. The only place that still smelled of Bernard. The only place I felt safe. Get out, I said, my voice low and absolute. Out of my house, now. Mom, please, let me explain, Marcus begged, stepping forward. There is nothing to explain, I cut in. Return everything in that truck. Now. We can't, Tiffany said flatly. Some items are gone. We already sold them. Then you will pay me for them, I replied, feeling an unfamiliar steel in my tone. Every cent, or I will call the police. You'd call the police on your own son? Tiffany sneered. Don't be ridiculous. You're too weak to do that. Her sneer didn't unsettle me. Her contempt only sharpened my resolve. I looked straight at her. Whatever she'd been counting on faltered. Marcus paled and started to sob openly. We're family, he choked. We didn't want it to go this far. Family doesn't steal, I said, each word measured and cold. Family doesn't conspire to take everything from one of their own. What you did was criminal. My hands were shaking when I pulled my phone from my pocket. Marcus saw the motion and went even whiter. Who are you going to call? He asked, voice thin with panic. First, Doris, she'll witness everything. Then a locksmith. I'm changing every lock today. After that, Mr. Davies, my lawyer. I dialed before I finished saying it. Mom, you can't do this, Marcus pleaded. If you call the police, we'll be ruined. I'll have a record. I won't find work. His words begged for mercy. You ruined yourselves, I said, and I could hear how final it sounded. I'd done nothing but trust him. Doris answered on the second ring. Ellie, I thought you were on the plane. Doris, come to my house now, I said. I need a witness. I'm on my way, she said, and I heard the door close on her end. She lived 3 houses down. She'd be there in minutes. I turned back to them. You have 2 choices, I told Marcus and Tiffany. You stay and wait for Doris and the police, or you start putting everything back into that truck, now. Maybe I won't press charges if you cooperate. That's blackmail, Tiffany spat. No, I said quietly. It's justice. It's a chance you don't deserve, but I'm giving anyway. Because you turned my home into your personal warehouse, and I will not stand for it. Marcus looked at the truck, at me, at Tiffany. The conflict in his face was the conflict between the son I raised and the man he'd become. All right, he said finally, voice thin. We'll put everything back. Tiffany stared at him in disbelief. What? Marcus, we need that money. This has gone too far, he said, wiping his face, beaten and exhausted. I can't keep doing this. You're weak, Tiffany hissed. No, Marcus said in a voice that surprised me, harsher, raw. I'm a thief. The single word landed between us like a verdict. I ordered them to start unloading immediately. Marcus nodded and trudged toward the truck. Tiffany followed, shooting me a look that held nothing but resentment. I stayed in my bedroom for a long time, staring at the empty dresser drawer where my treasures had lived, feeling a hollowness no returned object could ever fill. Then hurried footsteps, and Doris's voice. "Ellie, where are you?" "In the bedroom," I called. She arrived breathless, hair mussed from running. Doris was 65, sharp-eyed, my neighbor of 20 years, and my best friend for 15. When she saw Marcus and Tiffany hauling furniture back into the house, her face hardened. "What happened?" she demanded. I told her everything. Every stolen locket, every sold watch, every secret visit to my house. She listened, disbelief giving way to anger. "That wretch," she said when I finished. "That ingrate after everything you did for him." "He's my son," I whispered, feeling the tears return. "How can I report him? How can I call the police and ruin his life?" "He nearly ruined yours," Doris said, placing a steady hand on my shoulder. "This isn't petty theft. It's premeditated, systematic. They've been in and out of your home for months." We went downstairs together. Marcus and Tiffany were moving slowly, resentful, returning several pieces but the truck still half full. Neighbors clustered at their doors, eyes and whispers following the scene. Mrs. Rodriguez knocked on my gate and offered sympathetic words before retreating, sensing there was more than she could ask. 2 hours later, the truck was empty. I walked through the house with Doris at my heels. Though the furniture sat where it had before, the house felt violated, a sanctuary turned crime scene. "A lot is still missing," I said, looking at the empty niches, the jewelry, the watches, the locket. "The crystal, we sold them," Marcus admitted, entering behind us. "We can't give them back." "You'll give me a list," I said, voice steely. "A complete inventory of everything you sold. What it was, where you sold it, when, and for how much. You will pay me the true market value for each item, not the pennies you got at a pawn shop." "We don't have that money," Tiffany protested. "Then you'll get it," I said coldly. "You'll take extra work, do whatever it takes, but you will pay me every cent." "And if we can't?" Tiffany challenged. "Then I press charges," I replied simply. "I have a witness," I pointed to Doris, "and I have evidence of attempted breaking and entering." "I have your confession recorded." I held up my phone. Both of them paled as they realized I had been recording since Doris arrived. "That's cheating," Tiffany spat. "No," Doris said sharply. "That's prudence. That's protecting yourself from people who lack scruples." Marcus slumped onto the sofa, utterly defeated. "How much time do we have?" he asked. "You have 1 month," I decided then. 30 days to raise the money and repay the value of everything you stole. If not, I will take this to the police and the courts. I will file charges and show them the proof." He swallowed. The house that had once held a lifetime of comfort had become the place where their choices would be judged. The sun dipped low and the day closed on the brittle quiet of consequences finally arriving.